Okay, so this is segment 4 of our training on culture, race, and ethics in social work. So hopefully you've watched the first 3 segments already. The first one was on culture, the second one was on race, and then we just finished up segment 3, and segment 3 was about the different, discussing culture and race, and the different ground rules that you can have when having discussions with other people on topics of race and culture and ethnicity. In this 4th segment, we are going to talk for a few minutes about something called cultural encounters. You might not be familiar with the term, but this is something that we all experience every single day. And so it's something we talk about with our parents, and so something I wanted to address in this training. A cultural encounter is when you experience firsthand a situation with someone or a group of people of differing cultural backgrounds than your own. We talk a lot about cultural encounters with our families. We talk about the importance of expanding their cultural horizons by experiencing different cultural encounters. We talk to them about finding cultural experiences that will be familiar with their children. I have an Asian child, and so we celebrate the Chinese New Year, and so we love going to Asian restaurants. We love experiencing different cultural encounters, whatever that might be. We used to live in Illinois, and we lived right by the University of Illinois campus. The University of Illinois had a huge Asian population, and so I loved just taking Silas for a walk on the university campus, going to one of the restaurants there at the university, because in those situations I would be the minority and he would be in the majority, racially and culturally. And so I always enjoyed helping him participate in those encounters and making sure he knew that he didn't always have to be the minority. So we encourage our families all the time to have these cultural encounters, to be sure they're giving their children and providing their children with these cultural encounters, opportunities to experience different cultures and different races. When I was in college, I took a class in which we were required, as part of our grade, to have different cultural encounters each semester and write papers on those cultural encounters. Probably some of my favorite assignments I've ever done in my schooling. But one of the things that I did was I attended an Asian festival. I lived in Springfield, Missouri at the time, and so every year they had an Asian festival downtown, and so I went and I experienced it. At the time, my father was pastoring in Florida, and the majority of his church was Mexican. And so I had the opportunity to go to a Mexican wedding, also a Mexican funeral, which were a little bit of culture shock for me at that time. My young 21-year-old mind didn't kind of fathom the breadth of those events and what they entailed. For instance, at a Mexican funeral, they sit there and they bury the body themselves, and so it took quite a long time for them to put all the dirt into the grave and to bury that coffin, and it was interesting. And then in the wedding, I think it started 50 minutes late, which was totally the cultural norm, because somebody that needed to be there wasn't there yet. And what's funny is they ended up starting without her, and she showed up like 5 minutes later, totally upset that they had started without her. So participating in these cultural events, each instance included a certain amount of discomfort, and that I wasn't completely comfortable because I really didn't know what to expect. And at that point in my life, I'd rarely been in situations where I was a minority. The small town that I grew up in, up by Pittsburgh, was pretty white, pretty Caucasian. And so I hadn't had a lot of these opportunities yet in my life. And so there was a lot of feeling discomfort and uncomfortability in experiencing these and being the minority, which is something I wasn't used to at that time. But I loved each one of these situations. I learned learned that my cultural way of doing things might not be right or might not be best, which is one thing that I think us as Americans think a lot. We think that the American way of doing things is the right way of doing things. And it was just kind of a worldview altering for me, and thinking that maybe we don't do things the right way, or not the right way, but the best way. Maybe there are better ways of doing things. Maybe there are ways of doing things that I like better than the way I do them. I was raised in a Christian home, but I love attending Catholic masses, Catholic funerals, Catholic weddings, because I love the pomp and circumstance of it. That there's all this symbolism and everything that they do, and I love attending those services. I remember when I went to the Mexican wedding, I enjoyed it a whole lot more than my boring Caucasian weddings I had been to thus far in my life. Mexican weddings are much more lively, much more fun, and the food is exponentially better. I was telling you earlier that in the last segment that our church has a very large Congolese congregation, and how every year on New Year's Eve they have a watch night service. And what this watch night service consists of is, of course, they have a feast with wonderful food, where we come and we eat, and then they literally have service until after midnight, and it can go pretty long after midnight, depending on how God is moving and how long they want to go. And it was a wonderful experience, and my husband and I enjoyed it a lot. But this past year when we went, at one point my husband and I are sitting there, and we're kind of in the middle of the congregation where we usually sit on Sundays, and we're participating and we're worshiping and clapping and dancing and all the things that they do. And my husband and I look back and we notice that we're the only non-Congolese family sitting up with the other Congolese. That all of the other Caucasian families are standing against the back wall, just kind of lined up in a group together. They weren't really participating. They kind of were, but not fully. And so I think they were feeling a little bit of that discomfort, where they might not have experienced before, and being the minority and not being familiar with what's going on and not really understanding the customs and what's going on, and kind of just holding back as they experienced it. But we need to be sure that when we have these encounters, that we're not just watching from a distance, that we're participating, that if there's food, it might look disgusting, it might look completely different from what we're used to, but to dig into that food and to try new things. We might not understand the language that is being spoken, but that doesn't mean that we can't appreciate the different customs and the different things that are going on within that experience. When we participate in cultural encounters, it helps us with a couple of things. The first thing is that it debunks stereotypes. Again, like I said, so the Congolese people, for example, they're very musical. They love to sing and they love to dance. But I can't stereotype and say that all Congolese people love to dance and all Congolese people love to sing, because there might be some people within the Congolese community that hate it. It also helps you understand, in debunking these stereotypes, that not everyone within that race, within that culture is the same, that there's differences even within it. It also, another thing that cultural encounters help us do is they help us open doors to healthy communications. In that context, when you're the minority, when you're the one coming in and experiencing their culture, what they're used to, what their encounter is, you can ask so many questions, because it's just understood you're the outsider here coming in, so they expect you to have questions. And so it's a great learning opportunity where you can have great communication, you can ask questions, you can really get to know that culture better. And then the last thing that participating in culture encounters helps us with is that it helps expand our beliefs regarding how certain things should be done. For instance, when I was talking earlier about how I very much thoroughly enjoyed the Mexican wedding, much more than I enjoy our boring American Caucasian weddings. When we have these cultural encounters, it helps us understand that just because something's the American way of doing something doesn't mean that it's the best way of doing something. And that's just a great thing to understand. We, a lot of times as adoptive families, we expect the children coming into our home to acclimate to our way of doing things. And they may have done things a completely different way for the first 10, 12, 15 years of their life. And so maybe we need to learn how they do things. Maybe we need to start doing prayers at dinner the way they do prayers at dinner. Maybe we need to start cooking meals the way they cook meals at dinner. And so it's important to understand that we need to incorporate these different culture encounters, these different ways of doing things into our day-to-day life, and to maybe find new ways of doing things.